hppodcraft.com.
I had heard rumours of Seaton's aunt long before I actually encountered her. Seaton, in the hush of confidence or at any little show of toleration on our part, would remark, "My aunt," or "my old aunt, you know," as if his relative might be a kind of cement to an entente cordiale. From a boy's point of view, he looked distastefully foreign, with his yellow skin and slow chocolate-coloured eyes and lean, weak figure. Merely for his looks, he was treated by most of us true-blue Englishmen with condescension, hostility, or contempt. We used to call him Pongo, but without any better excuse for the nickname than his skin. He was, that is, in one sense of the term, what he assuredly was not in the other sense, a sport. Seaton and I were never in any sense intimate at school. Our orbits only intersected in class. I kept instinctively aloof from him. I felt vaguely he was a sneak, and remained quite unmollified by advances on his side, which, in a boy's barbarous fashion, unless it suited me to be magnanimous, I haughtily ignored.
That's from the beginning of Walter Delamare's Seaton's Aunt. And you're listening to the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
Here at hppodcraft.com, I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And I'm Chris Lackey, and our reader this week, we're using a standby, one of the good ones, rock solid, Rachel Lackey, my wife.
There it is, laying it down, doing it right, doing it for you.
We picked this one because because it comes from H.P. Lovecraft's supernatural horror literature. And Lovecraft mentioned this story in particular.
Yeah, he mentioned a few stories and also a novel. I mean, he's clearly a big fan. This is our first Delamere story. I think we started out right because when people talk about this author, this is the one that comes up over and over and over again. But let's save Lovecraft's comments about the author for, I think maybe, this is probably going to be 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So maybe at the end of the second episode, we can talk about that a bit. And actually, Lovecraft has some really nice writing when he's describing this story and Delamere's work. But what do we know about the author? Just basic facts?
Well, yeah, he's an English guy. He was born in Kent in 1873. His father was a banker, so he led a fairly cushy life. When he was 19, he joined this theater group. He fell in love with the leading lady of the play that he was involved in, and she's 10 years older than him.
Yeah.
29-year-old hooking up with a 19-year-old. Awesome. They got married eventually when he was 26, and they had 4 children together. He worked as a statistics guy for Standard Oil before publishing his first book called Songs of Childhood.
Yeah, he was at Standard Oil for something like 18 years and writing while he was working full-time until he received a pension of some kind that allowed him to finally focus exclusively on writing.
He's probably more well-known for his children's stories and poems, but he's got a few scary stories as well.
Yeah, it's interesting how that keeps coming up. The children's authors that also write ghost stories. I think that Delamere's got some interesting theories about imagination and children's imagination and how, I think this is a natural fit. A children's author is going to be able to bend to that dark side and be able to touch on some deep down emotions that we maybe manifested when we were children. And maybe that's why these authors can shift so well between one and the other. But as I said before, this is the story Seaton's Aunt that comes up again and again. So we'll get into a little more biography with him. There's interesting theories he has about writing and imagination that I want to talk about later. But let's just get into the actual story.
The story starts off with our narrator, this guy Withers, talking about a classmate of his named Arthur Seaton. This kid wasn't well liked, mostly because he wasn't pure-blood English.
Or they assume that he's not.
Because, well, they refer to him as having yellow skin, and they make comments about his eyes at different points. So maybe he's of East Asian heritage? They call him Pongo, which either means soldier or orangutan. I'm guessing it's orangutan because that's super racist, and that's probably what is going on there.
Yeah, I thought maybe because then I looked it up and saw that it was slang for soldiers, so thought maybe it was that the soldiers that are coming back from around that time, that are coming back from India or whatever, had these deep tans. They always describe them as having these really, really deep tans. And, like in Sherlock Holmes stories or in Saxon Romer stories.
It could
be. I thought maybe that was it, but I also, I had a friend who had a dog named Pongo that was a really sad dog. We used to call him Pongo the Goth Dog. So that's all I could think about.
Wait, how did he display his sadness?
He would just kind of, I think the dog's face was just constructed for it, but he was just always putting his face down on his paws and staring off into space. I don't know. He just looked, he was a really goth dog.
Was he listening to the Swans?
Also, he had a huge Black Tape for a Blue Girl and a Swans collection.
Okay.
Yeah, that on vinyl. So he was a pretty cultured dog. Yeah. The people in the school are really just making fun of him. I didn't get the sense that they were tormenting him necessarily, because even torment would mean that you'd have to get too close to this kid. Nobody really wants to hang out with him. Like the narrator said, they felt vaguely he was a sneak or something was going on.
Yeah.
He was pretty liberal with his money. It seems that Seaton's got a lot of dough, and he'd be doling it out different ways, possibly to try and make friends with people, although there was an instance he gives of how he would buy these stupid things with his money. It says he bought, for instance, a silver bangle, which he wore above his left elbow. I'm imagining he kind of had, was he trying to cultivate like a Cleopatra look or something like that?
Is a bangle like got a bell on the end of it?
It's definitely some metal thing because they heat it up and they drop it down his neck. Like they steal it from him and they heat it up and drop it down his neck, which is a terrible prank to play on somebody.
Horrible.
You give him serious burns.
It was rough for him, but Withers was nice to him this one time because Seaton gave everybody some berry jelly.
He had like too much of it, and so he gave some of it to Withers, and he really, really liked it.
Yeah, and he was like, oh man, thanks so much. And then Seaton invited him to spend half term over at his aunt's. Mm-hmm. And since he was just kind of high on the berry jelly, he agreed to it. He said, oh yeah, sure, of course I'll do it. And he just forgets about it after he says it. And then a few days before break, he reminds Withers, and Withers starts to make an excuse. But then Seaton says, my aunt expects you. She is very glad you're coming. She's sure to be quite decent to you, Withers. And he says that something about him, the emphasis, the way that he spoke was unexpected. And it seemed to suggest that it wasn't really a friendly welcome as so much as an obligation.
And also that the implication is because she treats me terribly.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's already a situation you don't necessarily want to get into. I also hate that feeling of remembering that you've committed to something that you don't really want to do. Like you were saying, he was just high on getting the gift. And so he's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. It'll be fine. I hate it when somebody suddenly reminds you, you said, you were going to go to this party. No, did I? I thought that day would never come.
Oh, yeah. I've been there.
Yeah.
I try not to do that anymore. And I think as an adult, I don't have to do it too much.
No. I had one really hard lesson. I may have even talked about it on the show before, but it was some 3rd of July weekend where I had stayed up at school. There was an English fella that I was only somewhat friends with, and we went out, myself and Josh Bentley and this guy, and we were out at the bar the night before drinking and hitting it off, and he had never been up to Chicago for Taste of Chicago, which was running at that time, and I was like, which was like a 3.5 hour drive from school. But I had a car, and I was like, well, shoot, I'm not doing anything tomorrow. Why don't you jump in and we'll drive up to Chicago and we'll go to this thing? Because I was just drunk and it sounded like a great idea. And then the next day, I forgot all about it. And I slept in all day. This pre-cell phone, so it was like the phone was just downstairs ringing off the hook, and he left like 17 messages because he'd gone home and packed up and was like excited and wanted to go. And I slept so long that over the course of the messages, they were like, "Yay, let's go. Where are you? Why aren't you responding to my calls? You're a real asshole." Like it just the whole thing was on there, and then I was like, okay. Teachable moment here. I am never going to do that again to somebody because I felt terrible about it.
He should have known that you were drinking. Promises from a drunk are not promises you should be counting on.
Yeah, that is
that's a lesson that he learned as well.
Well, it was college. That's where you pull. That's where you learn those lessons.
Well, maybe he didn't learn that lesson. Maybe he just thought you were a jerk.
Well, if he learned that lesson at that time, it probably wouldn't have been the wrong one either. That time of my life.
Oh God.
So they take the trip. This whole run up to it, them getting into the town where the house is and all of this stuff is described in such a way. I don't know. There's a part where they stop at a store and they get some rat poison.
Yeah.
Which is not explained. I guess that's just an errand he needs to go on. Very strange. And then he describes the town and there's a coach house and they get to the house. And then there's this whole scene with a tadpole pond.
The writing here is just really great. It sets this mood that I can't really describe. It's just, it's all believable and not really strange, but it is strange.
Yeah.
What I think great weird fiction does it. It makes you go, is something going on here? Is something wrong? Is something other or not? I don't know. And that uncertainty makes you feel weird, which is the point of weird fiction. And it's great.
Absolutely. Because this was going to be our Lovecraftian month, I really think we hit the jackpot here.
Oh my God.
These two sentences are what I'm referring to. It says, Seaton led me at once through the little garden gate to show me his tadpole pond, swarming with what, being myself not the least bit of a naturalist, I considered the most horrible creatures, of all shapes, consistencies, and sizes, but with whom Seaton seemed to be on the most intimate of terms. I can see his absorbed face now as he sat on his heels and fished the slimy things out in his sallow palms. There's that disclaimer.
Yeah.
I'm not a naturalist.
No.
So these very well might be just natural creatures he's not familiar with. But it's also possible that they're little freaky monsters that Seaton's been growing in this thing or something, and he himself has got that unnatural thing. So I got like a Deep One Innsmouth kind of vibe from that.
Sure.
I was wondering, where is that going to go?
But not. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe they're just tadpoles that he's never seen before of a different type of species of frog, or maybe at a different stage of development that he hasn't seen before. Nothing really supernatural obviously happens in the story.
Spoiler alert, yeah, there's no skeletons burst out of the ground and start fighting people.
No. But it is really creepy and strange. I just can't get enough of it. But anyway.
I'm so glad you liked it, because when I read it last week and I sent you an email and I said, just be prepared, because nothing really happens in it. So I didn't know if you were going to have that reaction.
Nothing does happen. I mean, stuff does happen, but not in a skeleton jumps out of a closet or a big monster, eats a dude. Like nothing like that.
Nothing like that, no.
I can't wait to keep talking about it. In fact, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to keep talking about it.
Because we have the appearance of the character here.
Yes, Seaton's aunt. So, and how it happens is they're just sort of hanging out. This is another weird thing. They don't go into the house. It's like Seaton and Withers sort of just meander around the yard. They don't go in the house. And he's kind of like, this is weird. But then he goes, this is kind of typical Seaton. He does weird stuff that I don't get. Why aren't we going into the house? But then Seaton cries, look out, there she is, and points up at the window. And that's a strange thing to say. Like, look out?
Yeah,
There's lots of that. There's lots of strange things. I mean, they're strange, but they're not that strange.
Well, right, because I was thinking you do meet those people because he has this he says, I had this feeling as if I'd been caught doing something.
Yeah.
Once I saw Seaton's aunt there in the window, because she's just up in the garden in the window looking down at them and kind of cutting this figure that is frightening.
Yeah, and posing, he says. But he realizes that she's not actually tall. It was just that she had been up there. She's up higher than him, and the window was big as well. So he felt like she was really big. But when he actually meets her a little bit later, he realizes that she's not.
Right.
But yeah, that's right. That feeling like you're in trouble, like you did something wrong.
Every once in a while, you'll meet somebody, and they have that personality that you go like, they already don't like me, They're already, they're judging me, or they think I'm weak, or you know what I mean? There's something that comes across.
I mean, we talked about this once. Remember that I went to that second location with the hippie? Remember that? This story reminds me of that.
Right.
Where things were just off.
Well, so they finally get to go in once they've seen her.
Withers is introduced to Seaton's aunt. She seems very aloof. She gets his name wrong. She calls him Smithers.
At one point, she even calls him Johnson. Just goes way. It's almost, there are tiny little bits of comedy in here as well.
Oh,
or at least they read that way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's funny. She's like, I have no idea why she calls me Johnson. Maybe I must have reminded her of somebody she knew or something. No idea.
They just sound like English names. She's just trying. It's that kind of thing where you don't even want to correct them. You're like, the relationship's going to be this way. You call me whatever you want to call me. I don't care.
It doesn't matter.
Just keep calling me whatever makes sense to you.
But she seems really fixated on Withers and totally ignoring her nephew. It's really strange because she says sort of mean stuff, but she doesn't really say mean stuff. When I look on my nephew, Mr. Smithers, is what she says, I realize that dust we are and dust we shall become. You are hot, dirty, and incorrigible, Arthur. And Arthur is the name of Seaton. That's his first name. So it's like, where's that coming from?
Yeah, why does she look at him and it reminds her that we're all going to die?
Yeah.
What?
That's a weird thing. And they don't say how old they are here, but I get the impression they're young-ish, like probably 11, 12.
Oh, you think they're that young?
Oh, yeah. Because they talk about playing games and doing those types. They don't seem like teenagers to me.
Gosh, I didn't even think about it like that. In my head, they were like older.
They don't specify at any point.
Yeah.
But when they're talking about like they were playing hide and seek and stuff like that, to me, that just seemed like something that they're kind of starting to go into adulthood. That maybe 13 even. I don't know, somewhere around there.
Yeah, they refer to themselves as schoolboys. So I guess that you're probably right.
So she invites them in, obviously, to eat. And when they get there, it's really bizarre because there's tons of food there. And it's not normal food, as in like just food people typically eat. It's like rich people food. It's like this really huge spread of amazing food.
Although it doesn't sound, and that could just be cultural, it sounds terrible to me. Lobster mayonnaise. It's like the grossest thing I've ever heard. It sounds so bad.
Cold game sausages, an immense veal, ham pie with farced eggs, and numberless delicious flavors.
And wine. The whole scene does here tip into the vampiric a little bit because she has this huge appetite. She's just eating and eating and eating. Meanwhile, Seaton is only eating almonds and raisins, as if he's weak and he can barely, like it says he's choking those down. So you get that feeling like she's wasting him away somehow while she continues to have this voracious appetite. I like stories where they do have that vampire bent, but there's nothing supernatural. Like, I mentioned this to you. I just watched Behind the Candelabra, that Liberace movie.
I love that movie.
Well, I thought it was really great, but it is, if you can look at it as a vampire movie, I think, because, you know, he cycles through these young men.
Yeah.
Gets them into his confidence, sort of takes their life away from them, and then spits them out for the next one. I think stories like that, I think with that dynamic, are always really good. Of course, I'm a big fan of that Val Lewton movie, Isle of the Dead, I mention all the time, which also has a thing like that going on where, you know, the young girl keeps getting more and more healthy while the older woman wastes away. But it's not overtly supernatural. As you said, she's really obsessed with Withers.
This is the weird things that in the writing. It says, she merely scattered trenchant remarks now and then, twinkled a baited question over my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so she would say things like, and is Arthur a good boy at school, Mr. Wither? You know, calls him Mr. Wither, not
Wither. Yeah.
Arthur will never make a brilliant scholar, I fear. And it's just kind of mean.
It's really mean. Those are things I remember being at people's parents, going over to somebody's house and having the parents kind of insult the kid while you're in front of them. And it's always very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then that extends into adulthood. You're somebody's house guest and like they'll get into a skirmish while you're there. This happened to me recently where I was washing the dishes and putting them away for the people I was staying with. And, you know, the wife was like, see, he knows how to load a dishwasher. And I'm like, I don't want to be, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be in this conversation. Write it down and talk about it later if it's on your mind. And that's the kind of thing that's going on. Like, oh, you seem to be a good student. Look at this idiot over here, Arthur. Just running him down.
After the meal's over, she takes him upstairs into this room, which is pretty tidy, but it has a lot of nautical art in it. And she says the strangest thing. She says, this is the room, Withers. My brother William died when he was a boy. Admire the view.
Which is hilarious. Here goes your room. Somebody died in here. Enjoy. That is definitely for humorous effect.
Yeah,
you know?
that made me chuckle.
But there's the very Innsmouth kind of image here. There's nautical stuff all over, but there's one black framed watercolor drawing depicting a large eye with an extremely fish-like intensity.
Yeah.
In the spark of light on the dark pupil, and in illuminated lettering beneath was printed very minutely, "Thou God seest me," followed by a long looped monogram SS in the corner. What?
Yeah. Don't know.
I think that maybe, one of his relatives was a sailor or something like that, but it gave me that strange, creepy, I don't know what's going on. It's as if they came from some other place, or...
You don't know.
You don't know, but that fish-like eye...
It's never explained.
And, there's this imagery running across that we're about to get into where, you know, Seaton's opinion is that she sees everything, and so... It's not just a painting. It's like an agent for her. The painting is watching you.
Yeah, that's something he says later on. He says that the whole house, Seaton says this, that there are these little things around the house that help her see him and see what he's doing. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we'll get to that. We're jumping the gun a little bit.
We are. Because right here, there's another thing that she does where she's running him down. Why is he so unpopular?
Yeah.
I do understand that you're his only close friend, which is a surprise.
Yeah.
This hasn't happened to me ever, but I do know people have been like, yeah, I went over there and they were like, hey, this is my best friend. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Hold the phone.
I've known people too that have been like invited to be like people's, in people's weddings and don't really know them very well.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, you're asking me? Like, I really don't know you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's horrible.
But following through with the nautical thing, she says, don't trouble to answer me. I never extort an answer. Boys are queer fish. Again, it's a throwaway line, but it's very smart writing.
It's never directly addressed, and it's just subtle, mood-altering writing, and it's really cool.
And while she's talking to Withers, she says, oh, Seaton's probably out there skulking behind a hedge, which he is.
Yeah.
It goes with that description early on that he's sneaky.
Yeah.
So she says, go on out there and play with him. So you're right. It is a little more boyish because don't they, what do? They ride a horse?
Well, yeah, they find a horse out in the field and they jump on the back of the horse and ride the horse around, which as a kid, I would never, as an adult, I would never do anything like that. Find some random horse and just start riding it around. That's crazy.
Go for it.
But they do. But when they're riding around, Seaton falls off the horse. I mean, he's unhurt. He's fine. He rolls off, and Withers jumps off after him to make sure he's okay. And they see this woman walking with a parasol, and he's like, "Is that your aunt?" And then he's like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Why isn't she, say something or even look our way or, pay some attention?" And he just says, "She never does." And he goes, "Why not?"
Yeah, as if wouldn't she be interested at all what we're doing?
Oh, she knows all right. Without, that's the damn awful part of it.
Right, and this is where he gets into saying that she's somehow omnipresent. She's got eyes in the back of her head. You know?
She sees everything. And what she doesn't see, she knows without. It's like, what? And he goes, okay, how does she know how to do these things? Like, people can't just know stuff. And Seaton says that, well, it's because she's in league with the devil.
Whoa.
You fellas don't realize what it is. I know I'm a bit close and all that, but so would you be if you had the old hag listening to every thought you think.
Wow.
And it's at this point, I'm thinking crazy. Like, Seaton is nuts.
Yeah.
To think that she can do all this stuff. But also, maybe he's not nuts.
Then there's some explanation of what the actual situation is here.
Right.
Because his father is gone. Mm-hmm. His mother's been gone.
Right.
And the aunt is not, it's not his mother's sister.
Well,
basically, she's an unrelated aunt. They're not blood relations.
Well, I mean, I thought they could be. Because he says, I mean, she's not my mother's sister because my grandmother married twice and she's one of the first lot. So she's half sister, maybe?
Yeah.
But not necessarily?
The point is that they're not directly related.
No.
She's not a sibling of his mother or his father.
Right.
You could read this as, well, his family died. He got stuck with somebody that he's not close to, and there's no closeness between either of them, obviously.
No.
So everything he says is just this resentment he's building up that he's now turned into, well, she's in league with the devil and she has powers, and it could just be just a bad domestic situation.
Yeah.
Nothing supernatural at all.
As much as she's kind of railing Seaton, Withers still feels like, well, she's not that bad. She's not a witch or anything. She's just maybe a little rude. And so he's kind of defending her a little bit. So he says, well, she does give you plenty of pocket money. And then Seaton comes out with, she can't give me what's mine. It's my money. I'm going to get it all, when I get old enough.
I'm going to make her hand over every blessed shilling of it. He's, and Seaton, it's kind of bragging, like, and it's a lot of dough.
Yeah.
But Withers is skeptical. Well, who told you that you have this inheritance? And that just makes Seaton really angry.
And he stomps off.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have any other living family. So how does he know he's got all this money that's coming to him? And he doesn't.
Yeah.
Or maybe he does. And he doesn't want to tell him why at this point. We move on ahead. They're together again. It's tea time. And his aunt says some more strange, creepy things.
There's an adaptation. During the scene, I thought, how would this work if you were to adapt it? And I looked it up, and there is apparently an adaptation of Seaton's aunt. It's from a show called Shades of Darkness from the 80s. It's a UK show. And this was, in the summer of 83, this adaptation came out. So I've never seen it. If anybody knows about it, shoot us a link or something, because I'd be interested to see how somebody played this out, if it would still work.
I feel like it would really work as drama.
If it was paced right.
It feels like, I hate saying it, but it kind of feels like a David Lynch thing.
Oh, David Lynch. I'm so glad Twin Peaks is coming back.
I know.
That blew my mind when I heard that.
That's what made me think of it. I've got David Lynch on the mind right now.
Right.
But like I said, she was at this meal. She says some creepy things. She goes, I hope Arthur's made you feel at home, but he doesn't talk to me much because I'm an old woman. You must come again with her and draw him out of his shell. And she calls him an old snail. And then she goes, well, maybe we should correspond together and you could write me and tell me everything that this little creature does behind my back. And it's like, whoa.
She's making a side deal.
Just right in front of him, too.
You and I will be friends, and then you can tell me what's up with this idiot.
Which is creepy. It's an inappropriate relationship to be having all around. Mm-hmm. After that happens, they play some chess, but not Seaton. He won't play. So Mrs. Seaton, or Miss Seaton, we don't know her last name, his aunt, she plays with Withers. And she constantly gets him in a check, but she won't let the game finish. She won't give the merciful coup de grace and end the game.
Right.
She lets it drag on until 10 o'clock at night. And then she goes, oh, well, I guess it's a draw.
She sweeps everything away and says, yeah, I guess we never got that finished. Withers is like, of course, well, you could have, you won pretty clearly. The whole thing has that vibe. She's like a predator toying with its prey.
Yeah.
She's drawing it out for her own titillation to she just won't do the checkmate because that's the most fun part for her, is to continue cornering him over and over. And along with the food and all of this business, it just really starts characterizing her as this cruel monster.
Yeah, it's really creepy. And she even says that, oh, I was in a hole. You could have finished me off at any moment there. I'm glad that the game ended as it did. And she burst out laughing. God, she's just so vile. So before they go to bed, though, they go into back into the dining room and just have some supper. So they just stand there and eat right before they go to bed. Seaton comes out with some more creepy talk. He's like, being spied on, every blessed thing you do and think.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right. He goes, why did you let her beat you at chess? And he goes, I didn't let her beat me. She was doing it to me. I don't understand what's going on. He says, you must have You must have
funked it.
Funked it.
Yeah.
I never heard that phrase before.
Like he was throwing the game. And that's a great turn because you go back to more of a reality where since Withers is getting along with the aunt, now Seaton is starting to make him a bad guy too.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you're throwing the game. You're doing these things. Well, you could have done something against her, but now you two are in league. You know, it's that kind of, well, maybe Seaton's just a crazy guy who's got paranoia.
Yeah.
Which is totally
understandable,
backed up by what is about to happen.
Sure.
Because Withers goes to bed, and like in a lot of these stories, suddenly a guy with candlelight shows up and says, "Wake up, wake up, wake up!" You know.
So it's Seaton waking up Withers again, and it's a little bit before 12, and he says, "What are you doing up?" And he goes, "Oh, I never go to sleep before 12, not here." And he goes, "Well, what do you do then?" He goes, "Oh, I read and listen." Listen?
Seaton stared into his candle flame, as if he were listening even then. You can't guess what it is. All you read in ghost stories, that's all rot. You can't see much, Withers, but you know all the same. Know what? Why, that they're there. Who's there? I asked fretfully, glancing at the door. Why, in the house. It swarms with them. Just you stand still and listen outside my bedroom door in the middle of the night. I have, dozens of times. They're all over the place. Look here, Seaton, I said. You asked me to come here, and I didn't mind chucking up a leave just to oblige you and because I'd promised, but don't get talking a lot of rot, that's all, or you'll know the difference when we get back. Don't fret, he said coldly, turning away. I shan't be at school long, and what's more, you're here now, and there isn't anybody else to talk to. I'll chance the other.
I'll go ahead and chance that you're not going to like me for telling you this because I'm not going to be in school long anyway. So he's got this fatalistic thing going on where he feels things are going to end for him soon for some reason. Again, playing into that vampire relationship.
He says that, I suppose she told you that this is the room where her brother died.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, yeah, trust her on that one because it's true.
He holds his candle up to the watercolor of the eye.
Right. And he goes, there's hundreds of eyes like that in the house. And even if God does see you, he takes precious good care you don't see him. And it's just the same with them. I tell you that, Withers, I'm getting sick of all of this. I shan't stand it much longer.
Again, that fatalistic kind of thing. Either he's going to die or go away, or he's going to do something drastic. And odd that he's saying, Withers, what is the house full of? Seaton says she brings them.
Who? Your aunt? And he nods. And he's like, but how does she bring them?
And again, it's that she's in league with the devil.
I know that she killed my mother, but I know it's not just my mother. I know there's lots of other people. She just sucks you dry. I know she does this.
She just sucks you dry.
All right, another vampire.
And then he says, we're all under her thumb. So he attributes a lot more power to her. This still seems absurd to Withers, but...
Yeah, well, he says that she hates seeing me alive. He says I'm too much like my mother, and there's something about my mother that angered her, and she wants me dead.
You can see this childish blowing up of the power of the parent, too, because, I sort of like when I was a teenager and we'd sneak off to smoke cigarettes, go hide somewhere in a park or, I had a friend that was terrified of that his mother would find out he was doing that. Mm-hmm. So even if he wasn't around, he'd be like, be careful. My mom will see you. And I was like, I don't care. I mean, why should I be afraid? But he had blown up her power into this kind of omniscient disciplinarian. And I feel like that's a little of what this is, or you could perceive it that way.
Sure. Yeah.
Because Withers' reaction, too, is like, whatever. She doesn't have any power over me. She weirds me out, but big deal.
Yeah, he also says something, too. Don't you go and believe I care for ghosts, or whatever you like to call them. We're all in the same box. We're all under her thumb.
Yeah.
So they're not really ghosts? He doesn't go into any more detail, and we really ultimately don't get any more explanation about what's going on in this story.
And even him saying that she's in league with the devil, it doesn't necessarily mean he's talking about the literal devil.
No.
It's just sort of an expression. So, she's in league with these evil spirits. I don't know, man.
Withers is just not having it. He's like, look, you're being crazy. You must think I'm a jolly noodle, is what he says.
Then he says, I bet that if we went down to her room right now, she wouldn't even be there.
And he's like, dude, I know she's there because I saw her go up to bed and she walked down the hall. She's in her bed. And he goes, okay, well, let's go check. because I know that she's not there.
Can you imagine getting roped into that?
Oh,
You're
God.
going to creep out in your pajamas with some guy to look and see if his aunt's in bed or not.
Oh, dude. Well, it's all creepy. Just think of him coming up to the room with the candle, in the middle of the night, saying all this crazy stuff about ghosts and killing moms. And
It's crazy. And I think we can pick it up next time with them doing that creep down to see if she's in her bed or not. Spoiler alert, she's not.
What? Oh.
She's doing her own creeping around the house, and that's what they're going to discover. And then we're going to do like a jump forward in time a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Where we'll see how Seaton's circumstances have changed in the future. So pretty fun stuff. I'm glad that this really fit into the weird tale.
Oh my God. It's I think this might be one of my favorite weird tales.
It's good. It's really, really good. When I first read the whole story, I thought, oh, that was interesting. I thought more was going to happen, but it kept sticking with me. I kept thinking of it.
Yeah.
Which is really, that doesn't always happen, obviously, with these stories. I read Haida the Shepherd and then Haida the Who, it just kind of went away. This is a really great story.
Yeah. It is. I'm looking forward to talking about it more.
I recommend that if you haven't read it between these two shows, go ahead and pick it up and give it a read. This is one that's highly recommended.
All right. Well, I want to thank Rachel Lackey again for stepping in and getting us out of a pinch and doing some reading for us. She's a treasure.
Thank you, Rachel, so much. Great job as always.
I am Chris Lackey.
I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And you've been listening to the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
We're here at hppodcraft.com.
hppodcraft.com.